It was the kind of camping trip we had all been dreaming of, a journey into the heart of the wild, where nature's untamed beauty reigned supreme. My friends and I had spent months planning, meticulously choosing our gear and poring over maps in anticipation of the adventure that lay ahead. We were a group of 5, each with a unique set of skills and quirks that added a special flavor to our little expedition. There was Mark, the outdoorsy type who could navigate through the thickest of woods; Lisa, the fearless adventurer with a passion for wildlife; Tom, the practical joker who kept us laughing; and Sarah, the one with a knack for cooking the most delicious campfire meals. Our destination was an isolated wilderness area, known only to a select few who ventured this far off the beaten path. The journey was arduous, with rugged terrain, unpredictable weather, and the constant need to watch our step. But with every challenge we faced, our camaraderie grew stronger. The first few days of our trip were filled with wonder and exploration. We marveled at the pristine lakes reflecting the azure sky, the majestic mountains that seemed to touch the heavens, and the serene meadows carpeted with wildflowers. Nature had opened its arms to us, and we embraced it with a sense of awe and reverence. As the sun dipped below the horizon each evening, we gathered around the campfire, sharing stories and roasting marshmallows. The crackling flames cast eerie shadows on the towering trees, and the sounds of the night, the chirping of crickets, the distant hoots of owls, and the rustling of unseen creatures, formed a symphony that lulled us to sleep. But on the 4th night, as darkness descended, an eerie unease settled over our campsite. The air grew still, and the sounds of the forest ceased. The usual symphony had fallen silent, replaced by an eerie hush. We laughed it off at first, attributing it to the unpredictability of nature. But as the hours passed, our laughter turned to nervous glances, and a sense of foreboding gripped us. There was an unspoken tension in the air, an inexplicable feeling that something was amiss. It was Lisa who first noticed the peculiar markings etched into the bark of the trees surrounding our campsite. They formed intricate patterns, almost like a language, but one we couldn't decipher. Tom, always the skeptic, dismissed them as the work of some mischievous camper who had passed through. But then came the voices, the distant, disembodied whispers that seemed to emanate from the very trees themselves. We strained to listen, but the words remained elusive, like secrets just beyond our grasp. As we exchanged worried glances, the voices grew louder, forming into eerie phrases that echoed through the woods. "Beware the shadow of the moon," one voice seemed to say, while another whispered, "They come with the night." The forest around us seemed to come alive with movement, shadows shifting and darting just beyond the reach of our flashlights. We huddled closer together, our hearts pounding in unison. And then, as if materializing from thin air, a spectral figure emerged. It was a figure draped in a flowing robe, its face obscured by a hood. It glided toward us with an otherworldly grace, and we were frozen in place, unable to move. The figure raised a bony finger and pointed toward the heart of the forest. Its voice, a haunting melody, filled our ears. "The ancient curse must be appeased," it intoned. "Only then shall the forest relent." With that, the figure vanished into the night, leaving us in stunned silence. We exchanged bewildered glances, unsure of what we had just witnessed. But as the night wore on, the whispers continued, and the forest itself seemed to come alive with a supernatural presence. Trees twisted and contorted, casting eerie, elongated shadows. Strange symbols appeared on the ground, etched in the earth as if by unseen hands. Our fear gave way to a determination to unravel the mystery. Armed with flashlights and a sense of trepidation, we followed the path indicated by the spectral figure. Deep in the heart of the forest, we stumbled upon a clearing, bathed in the eerie light of the moon. At its center stood a gnarled, ancient tree, its branches twisted into grotesque shapes. At the base of the tree lay an ancient, weathered tome, its pages filled with cryptic symbols and incantations. As we pored over the pages, we realized that the forest was under the grip of an ancient curse, one that demanded appeasement. The spectral figure had spoken the truth. Only by performing a ritual, one that had not been conducted in centuries, could the curse be broken. With a mixture of trepidation and determination, we followed the instructions in the tome, reciting incantations and performing the necessary rituals. The forest seemed to hold its breath as we worked, the eerie silence giving way to a palpable tension. And then, as the final words were spoken, the curse seemed to lift. The forest around us sighed with relief, the shadows retreating and the whispers fading into nothingness. As dawn broke over the horizon, we made our way back to our campsite, changed by the supernatural encounter with the ancient curse. We packed our gear, but our hearts were heavy with the weight of the secrets we had uncovered. As we descended from the mountains, we couldn't help but look back one last time at the wild, untamed wilderness that had both welcomed and challenged us. The forest had tested our resolve and shown us its darker, enigmatic side, but it had also rewarded us with a profound sense of connection to the mysteries of the natural world. And so, my friends, as we left the remote wilderness behind, we carried with us the memory of that fateful night. A night when the forest came alive with ancient magic, and we, mere mortals, found ourselves entwined in a tale as old as time itself. In the heart of the dense Appalachian wilderness, a group of friends and I embarked on an adventure that would forever change our lives. Our desire for a memorable camping trip led us deep into the rugged mountains, where nature's beauty and its secrets intertwined. We were a diverse bunch, brought together by our shared love for the great outdoors. Our preparations were meticulous, our excitement palpable. With backpacks filled with provisions, we set off on a sun-drenched morning, ready to conquer the wild. The hike was grueling, with steep ascents and narrow trails that seemed to stretch into eternity. We laughed, stumbled, and bonded over the challenges. Hours turned into days, and we reached our chosen campsite, a serene valley embraced by towering trees and nourished by a crystal-clear river. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with fiery hues, we gathered around the campfire. Its warm, flickering glow brought comfort and a sense of unity. The sounds of the forest, the gentle babbling of the river, the rustling leaves, and the distant calls of nocturnal creatures formed a soothing symphony. We shared stories, roasted marshmallows, and stared at the starlit canopy above, feeling like a speck in the grand tapestry of the universe. But as the night deepened, an unsettling feeling settled over us. The forest, once inviting, now felt ominous. Faint whispers began to echo through the trees. We huddled closer, dismissing it as the wind playing tricks on us. However, the whispers grew louder, morphing into eerie words that seemed to emanate from the very woods around us. Each of us exchanged nervous glances, our flashlights cutting through the inky blackness. The whispers grew distinct, as if the forest itself was trying to communicate. It was unnerving and impossible to ignore. Suddenly, a spectral figure materialized from the shadows, bathed in an otherworldly mist. It wore tattered clothing from a bygone era, its eyes filled with an otherworldly wisdom. We gasped, our breath visible in the chilly night air. The apparition beckoned us with a ghostly hand, and an unspoken understanding passed between us. We had to follow, had to uncover the secrets that lay hidden in the heart of the forest. With trepidation, we ventured deeper into the wilderness, our flashlights flickering like nervous heartbeats. The whispers grew louder, coalescing into a story, a tale of a love that had transcended time, a tragedy that had bound two souls in eternal longing. The night wore on, and the ghostly figure led us to an ancient graveyard hidden amidst the trees. Tombstones, their inscriptions faded by centuries of weathering, marked the resting places of those who had met their end in the untamed wilderness. It was a poignant reminder of the unforgiving nature of the mountains. The apparition pointed to one grave in particular, and the whispers intensified. It was clear that this was the source of the haunting, the restless spirit of someone who had suffered a tragic fate in these unforgiving woods. We paid our respects, our hearts heavy with sorrow for the long-departed soul. As we left the graveyard, the ghostly figure slowly dissipated into the night, its ethereal presence finally fading away. The whispers ceased, and the forest fell into an eerie silence. The following morning, we packed our camp and retraced our steps back to civilization, forever changed by the haunting encounter with the restless spirit of the Appalachian wilderness. We vowed to remember the tale and share it as a cautionary story to those who dared to venture into the deep woods. So, my friends, the next time you find yourself camping in the wilderness, keep your ears open, for you never know what secrets the forest may hold, or whose ghostly whispers you might hear in the dead of night. And remember, the wild, untamed heart of nature can be both beautiful and haunting, a place where stories are written in the whispers of the wind and the shadows of the trees. Our camping trip had been in the works for months. It was meant to be an escape from the concrete jungle and a plunge into the heart of the wilderness. Little did we know that this adventure would push us to our limits and test our sanity. Our group consisted of 5 close friends: Emma, Alex, Tom, Lily, and Jake. We were a diverse bunch with a shared love for nature. Our destination was a remote forest known as the Enigma Woods. Its name alone sent shivers down the spines of the locals, and whispers of strange occurrences and unexplained phenomena had been circulating for decades. Our journey started on a sunny morning, the air crisp and filled with the promise of adventure. The forest, cloaked in a thick canopy of ancient trees, beckoned us with an eerie silence. It was almost as if the woods held its breath, waiting for us to step into its embrace. The first days were picture-perfect: hiking, campfires, and starry nights. We reveled in the simplicity of life without cell phones and city noise. But as the days passed, the forest revealed its true nature. On the 4th night, a low, haunting hum began to permeate the air. It was a sound that seemed to come from the very heart of the forest, a melody that struck a chord deep within us. We followed the sound, like moths drawn to a flickering flame. As we ventured deeper into the woods, the hum grew louder, and the trees themselves seemed to sway in time with the eerie music. It was as if the forest itself was alive, and we were intruders in its mystical performance. We arrived at a clearing, bathed in an otherworldly light that seemed to emanate from the ground itself. In the center stood an ancient tree, its gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. Its leaves glowed with an ethereal luminescence, casting an eerie, pulsating light over the clearing. As we approached the tree, we noticed symbols etched into its bark, symbols that seemed to shift and change before our eyes. They told a tale of an ancient curse that bound the forest, a curse born of a terrible crime committed centuries ago. Suddenly, the ground beneath our feet gave way and we tumbled into a hidden underground chamber. Its walls were adorned with more cryptic symbols, their meanings a mystery to us. At the chamber's center lay an ancient book, its pages filled with incantations and curses. The book spoke of a malevolent spirit that dwelled within the forest, a spirit that hungered for revenge and could only be appeased by a blood sacrifice. As we read the incantations aloud, a cold wind swept through the chamber, and the atmosphere grew heavy with an otherworldly presence. The spirit materialized before us, an ethereal figure with hollow eyes and a voice that echoed with centuries of anger. It recounted the injustice that had bound it to the forest and its desire for vengeance against the living. In a desperate attempt to save ourselves, we offered up our most cherished memories, the moments of love and joy that had defined our lives. As we shared these memories, the spirit seemed to grow stronger, its form solidifying before our eyes. And then, as the final memory was shared, the spirit let out a deafening scream that reverberated through the chamber. It slowly dissipated into a swirling mist, its vengeful presence vanquished. As we climbed out of the chamber and returned to the clearing, we were forever changed by the experience. The forest around us seemed to sigh with relief, and the unnatural light dimmed. We made our way back to our campsite, haunted by the encounter with the malevolent spirit of the Enigma Woods. The forest had revealed its darkest secrets to us, testing our courage and resilience in the face of the unknown. We left with a profound respect for the mysteries that lay hidden within the wild, a reminder that nature's beauty can be as enchanting as it is terrifying. And so, my friends, if you ever find yourself drawn to the depths of a remote forest, be prepared for the unexpected. For in the heart of the wilderness, ancient curses and vengeful spirits may lie in wait, ready to test the limits of your endurance and your will to survive. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the tranquil woods surrounding Whispering Pines campground. The air was thick with the scent of pine, and the campfire crackled softly as campers settled in for the night. Little did they know that this serene haven would soon become the backdrop for a perilous adventure. Among the campers was Alex, an intrepid teenager with a reputation for fearlessness. Alex's curiosity often led to daring escapades, and this summer was no different. Accompanied by 3 friends, Ella, a nature enthusiast, Max, a tech whiz, and Mia, an aspiring chef, they had embarked on a camping trip that would push the boundaries of their courage. The first few days at Whispering Pines were idyllic, filled with hiking, fishing, and stories around the campfire. The friends reveled in the simplicity of life without screens and schedules, embracing the freedom of the great outdoors. But on the 4th night, a sense of unease settled over the campground. The familiar forest sounds, the rustling leaves, chirping crickets, and distant hoots of owls had fallen eerily silent. A chill crept through the air, and the friends exchanged nervous glances. As they sat around the campfire, shadows danced among the trees, their movements unnatural and unsettling. A strange hush enveloped the campground, broken only by a distant, mournful howl that sent shivers down their spines. The friends dismissed the eerie atmosphere as a trick of their imagination until they heard it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, approaching their camp city. Panic surged through their veins as they aimed their flashlights in the direction of the intruder. What they saw defied explanation. A tall figure cloaked in tattered rags, its face obscured by a mask fashioned from bark and leaves. It moved with a ghostly grace, its eyes gleaming with an unsettling intensity. Mia, the group's quick thinker, shouted out, demanding to know who the mysterious figure was and what they wanted. The response was a guttural growl, and the figure advanced, a gleaming knife in hand. In a frenzy of fear and adrenaline, the friends scattered, each fleeing in a different direction. The figure pursued relentlessly, its footsteps echoing through the forest. Max, using his tech skills, managed to send a distress signal to the local authorities, providing their GPS coordinates. As they ran, the friends stumbled upon a hidden path, overgrown and obscured by foliage. Desperation pushed them deeper into the woods, away from the relentless pursuer. They followed the winding trail, their flashlights their only guide. Hours passed, and exhaustion set in. Fear turned to determination as they pressed forward, praying for rescue. The forest seemed endless, its secrets closing in around them. Meanwhile, the local authorities had received Max's distress signal and launched a search operation. The campground was soon swarming with search teams, their flashlights cutting through the darkness as they combed the woods. Back in the heart of the forest, the friends stumbled upon an old, decrepit cabin, an eerie relic of a forgotten time. With no other options, they cautiously entered, finding refuge in its decaying walls. Inside, they discovered a journal, its pages filled with cryptic writings and sketches. The journal told the tale of a hermit who had once lived in the cabin, obsessed with the idea of unlocking the secrets of the forest. His writings hinted at a malevolent force that dwelled in the woods, a force that hungered for human souls. Their refuge was short-lived, as the figure closed in on the cabin, its malevolent presence palpable. It battered at the door, its strength unnatural and terrifying. But just as hope seemed to wane, the search teams, guided by Max's signal, arrived at the cabin. With a final, desperate push, they broke through the door, fluting the cabin with light. The figure recoiled, its unearthly growls filling the air. It was swiftly apprehended by the authorities, its mask removed to reveal the face of a wild-eyed, disheveled man. As the friends emerged from the cabin, shaken but alive, they were met with a sense of relief and gratitude. The danger that had lurked in the forest had been vanquished, and they were safe once more. In the days that followed, the friends learned the truth behind the mysterious figure. He had been a recluse, driven mad by his obsession with the forest's secrets. His malevolent actions had terrorized the campground for years. Whispering Pines. Campground was eventually reopened, and the friends returned home, forever changed by their perilous adventure. They had learned that courage could be found even in the face of the unknown, and that the mysteries of the wilderness were both beautiful and treacherous. The legend of their encounter with the malevolent force of the forest would be passed down through the generations, a chilling reminder that danger could lurk in the most serene of places, and that bravery could be found even in the darkest of woods. In the rugged expanse of the Rocky Mountains, there was a tale passed down through generations, a legend of a hidden valley known as Eden's Glen. It was said to be a place untouched by time, a sanctuary of unparalleled beauty and serenity. For the Harlow family, a group of explorers who had dedicated their lives to uncovering the world's secrets, Eden's Glen was the ultimate prize. The Harlow family consisted of Peter and Emma, a couple driven by their thirst for adventure, and their two children, Daniel and Lucy, who had grown up learning the ways of the wild and the thrill of discovery. Their quest for Eden's Glen was born of both love and desperation. It all began when Peter received a cryptic letter from his estranged father, who had disappeared decades ago in search of the fabled valley. The letter spoke of the valley's existence and hinted at untold riches hidden within its lush confines. It was a tantalizing promise, one that rekindled Peter's long-buried yearning for adventure. With the family's finances dwindling and the threat of losing their home looming overhead, Peter was convinced that the discovery of Eden's Glen would change their fortunes forever. Against Emma's initial reservations, they packed their gear and set out on an expedition into the Rockies. Their journey was fraught with challenges, treacherous terrain, unpredictable weather, and the constant threat of danger. But the Harlows were a resilient and determined family, fueled by the hope that Eden's Glen held the answers to their financial woes. Weeks turned into months as they ventured deeper into the heart of the Rockies, following the clues from Peter's father's letter. They endured hardships that would have broken most, but their determination remained unshaken. It was on the 4th month of their expedition, when they had almost given up hope, that they stumbled upon a hidden trail leading into the heart of the mountains. The path was overgrown and obscured by thick vegetation, but it beckoned them with an undeniable sense of purpose. As they followed the trail, it led them to a breathtaking vista, a hidden valley bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. The valley was a paradise of unparalleled beauty, with crystal-clear streams, lush meadows, and towering trees that seemed to touch the heavens. The Harlows knew they had found Eden's Glen. They set up camp at the edge of the valley, their hearts filled with a sense of awe and wonder. Each day they explored the paradise that surrounded them, discovering rare flora and fauna, and immersing themselves in the tranquility of the valley. But their joy was short-lived, for as they ventured deeper into the valley, they stumbled upon a series of ancient carvings and symbols that hinted at a darker truth. It became clear that Eden's Glen was not just a haven of beauty, but also a place steeped in mystery and danger. One evening, as the family gathered around the campfire, they heard the distant sound of drums echoing through the valley. It was a haunting rhythm that seemed to reverberate with an ancient power. The drums grew louder, and the ground beneath their feet trembled with each beat. The Harlows realized they were not alone in the valley. A hidden civilization, shrouded in secrecy, had been watching them all along. The next morning, as the family prepared to explore further, they were ambushed by a group of indigenous people who had lived in the valley for generations. The leader of the group, a wise and weathered elder, spoke to them in a language they could not understand. Through gestures and a shared sense of urgency, the elder conveyed a message. The family had trespassed into sacred territory, and they must leave immediately or face dire consequences. Desperation gripped the Harlows, torn between the riches promised by the valley and the need to respect the indigenous people's wishes. Emma, always the voice of reason, urged them to leave, fearing the wrath of those who called the valley home. But Peter, consumed by the idea of financial salvation, refused to give up so easily. He believed that the answers to their problems lay within the valley, and he was willing to risk everything to find them. The family's division escalated into a bitter argument, with emotions running high. In the end, it was a decision made out of desperation and anger that would change their lives forever. Peter, unable to let go of his obsession with Eden's Glen, made the fateful choice to stay behind while the rest of the family left the valley as the indigenous people demanded. He was convinced that the valley held the answers he sought, and he was willing to risk everything to find them. As Emma, Daniel, and Lucy reluctantly departed the valley, leaving Peter behind, they couldn't shake the feeling of regret and sorrow that gnawed at their hearts. They knew that they had abandoned a part of their family, and the decision weighed heavily on their souls. Months passed, and the Harlows returned to civilization, their financial troubles left unresolved. They couldn't escape the haunting memories of Eden's Glen and the price they had paid for their obsession. But it was Peter who would pay the greatest price of all. Alone in the valley, he searched tirelessly for the riches he believed were hidden there. He became consumed by greed and resentment, his anger and regret festering like a wound. One fateful night, as he delved deeper into the valley's secrets, Peter stumbled upon an ancient chamber. At its center lay a treasure chest filled with jewels and artifacts beyond imagination. He had found what he had been seeking, the riches of Eden's Glen. But his triumph was short-lived. For as he reached out to claim the treasure, the very ground beneath him gave way, and he tumbled into a hidden chasm. In his greed and desperation, he had triggered a trap set by the indigenous people to protect their sacred valley. Peter was never seen again. Back in civilization, Emma, Daniel, and Lucy received word of Peter's disappearance. Their sorrow and guilt weighed even heavier on their hearts. They had lost a husband and father, all for the sake of an obsession that had torn their family apart. Emma, Daniel, and Lucy returned to the Rockies, determined to find closure and to pay their respects to Peter, wherever he may be. They were met by the indigenous people of Eden's Glen, who had learned of Peter's fate and were willing to forgive the family for their trespass in exchange for their respect and understanding. Together, they conducted a ceremony to honor Peter's memory and to express their remorse for the family's actions. It was a solemn and emotional moment, a chance for both sides to find forgiveness and healing. As they left the valley for the final time, the Harlows carried with them the lessons of their fateful journey, a tale of family, obsession, and the price of desperation. They had learned that true riches were not measured in material wealth, but in the bonds of love and forgiveness that held their family together. And so, the legend of Eden's Glen continued to be whispered among the indigenous people and those who had heard the Harlow family's story, a cautionary tale of the consequences of obsession and the enduring power of love and forgiveness.